Hello, BookTube. Well, I went to the Brattle. Uh, you meet the strangest people there, I tell you. And I got only three books, but I thought, well, why not show them to you? They're all fascinating. And the first one is something we've seen on this channel before. I can't believe my good luck. I showed you once upon a time in one of the 1,000 videos that I've done the Barnes& and Noble Remainder edition of Moby-Dick. And I remember at the time saying that mine was falling apart and faded and all rubbed dry, and that I was going to be sorry to see it go because you never see it for sale. And I found it. I found a perfect condition copy with the Mark Summers full color illustrations, and there's a poem at the beginning. There's a poem of Melville's, and there's an introduction by Mark Halperin, and my favorite Moby Dick edition. I found it at the Brattle, just sitting there. Well, I had to grab it. That was wonderful. And I found a Penguin Classic to continue with Project Penguin, eventually filling a whole room with penguins. Wouldn't that be great? To walk through a doorway and walk into a room full of Penguin Classics. I'm all for it. And this is Wilfred Thesiger. This is The Marsh Arabs. A Penguin Classic of The Marsh Arabs, which actually has, I was amazing to see this, it actually has his black and white photography from when he went to the great marshes of southern Iraq back when they still existed, back before they were drained and bombed out of existence. And he got to know the Marsh Arabs. He got to this was post-war, after World War II. He got to know them, got to know their villages, got to know their leaders and their people. Performed all sorts of ad hoc medical services for them, and came to fall in love. He would go back every year. He came to fall in love with the marshlands, and a generation after he fell in love with them, I fell in love with them. It's amazing ecosystem, absolutely amazing, and he was still remembered. Memory of him had still been passed down. This great guy, this white guy that had come through and was approachable and nice and wise, and like him, I thought it was just a stunningly beautiful thing, just a vast expanse of wetlands, and it was they were largely destroyed by Saddam Hussein and by the chaos that he unleashed on his own country. So this book, Thesiger I don't think he meant to write it as an epitaph, but nevertheless, it stands as one. The efforts have been made in the last few years, the last decade, I think, to rewild the marshes, but a lot of the damage was fundamental. You can't make lightning strike twice. So, I mean, this thing had grown up over thousands of years, and the civilization, the people, the culture of the indigenous Marsh Arabs had likewise grown up for 1,000 years. So you can't just replace that by returning the water. I think it's grown a little as an ecosystem. I think because it was a nub of the ecosystem that remained viable. If you give that a chance, it might expand, which is neat. But I know from Google Earth that the expanse that exists now is a fraction of what I saw, which was a fraction of what Thesiger saw. So I was very happy to find this book. He wrote also Arabian Sands, which is his classic, and I read it and loved it. But I haven't read the Marsh Arabs in I don't know how long, probably 30 years. So it was great to find this. And then the last thing was the real find of the day. Just thrilled me. It's the kind of oddity you only find at the Brattle. It's the Spanish Adventures of Washington Irving by Claude Bowers. And it's a book about Washington Irving's adventures in Spain as America's ambassador to the Alhambra. And it's the catch is that the author, Bowers, was also, a century later, an American ambassador to Spain. And he loved the romantic idea of Washington Irving in Spain, and wrote a book about it. And I never read it, and I can't wait. I think I've mentioned on this channel before, I'm an enormous fan of Washington Irving. I think it's a crime that his works are out of print, except for Sleepy Hollow. I think it's just a crime. One of America's first great writers, and one of its greatest writers who is not read, who's not reprinted, there are no great accessible editions aside from Library of America. It drives me nuts. The guy never wrote a bad book, and yet even Tales from the Alhambra is usually out of print these days. It's crazy, except for Sleepy Hollow. But anyway, so I didn't mean to rant. But I was very happy to find this book, and I was reading through it a bit, and fell in love right away with the prose. So I was very happy to see that this guy wrote a lot of other books. Because if this showed up at the Brattle, maybe they all will, and I'll gladly gobble them up. And he wrote a lot of nonfiction too. He wrote 2 books on Thomas Jefferson, so I'll be looking for those. But I wanted to show you those. That was because it was a small Brattle haul, but I don't have big Brattle hauls anymore, and it was precisely on target. These are lovely books. There's the Spanish Adventures of Washington Irving, the Marsh Arabs, and the Barnes & Noble Remainder edition of Moby-Dick. Who knew? So there you go. There's a Brattle haul to brighten up your day. Thank you, BookTube.